Hey, what's up guys? Brian Kelly here from Zombie Guitar. Here in today's video, I want to talk about creating a pentatonic based solo that has a little bit of extra melodic elements added into it. The majority of the solo is going to be pentatonic based though. So what's up with the pentatonic scale? Why are all guitar players always talking about this pentatonic scale? Why are all guitar lesson videos about the pentatonic scale? Everything's just pentatonic, pentatonic, pentatonic. What's up with that? The reason is because this 5-note scale, that's what the pentatonic scale is. It's a 5-note scale, not a 7-note scale, like a lot of the other ones, like the major scale or the natural minor scale, the harmonic minor scale, the melodic minor scale. Those are all 7-note scales. The pentatonic scale is a 5-note scale. When you stick to that 5-note scale, it produces a very distinct sound. Guitar players love this sound. It's used all the time. The way that I can describe this sound is rock, blues-esque, but that's not to say that the pentatonic scale is only used in rock and blues. It's used in every single genre of music. Now those 5 notes can be found all up and down the fretboard, and they form all these different patterns. That's where your 5 pentatonic positions come into play. But at the heart of it, it's just 5 notes. In addition to this 5-note pentatonic scale, we're also going to be talking about 2 other scales in this lesson. Number 1 is the diatonic scale. The diatonic scale is just the pentatonic scale with 2 more notes added to it. That's all it is. You stick to those 5 pentatonic notes, it produces a rockin' type of sound. You add in the 2 missing diatonic notes to that 5-note pentatonic scale, resulting in a 7-note scale, which is called the diatonic scale. Now you have a 7-note palette of notes to play around with, to create music with, to create melody lines with, just to make music with. And then the third scale we're going to be talking about in this lesson is going to be the blues scale. Now the blues scale, I don't even really think of it as a scale really. It's simply just the pentatonic scale plus 1 extra out of key note added to it. So the first thing that I do anytime I write a solo or improvise a solo or analyze someone else's solo or anything regarding soloing, I always look at the rhythm section first and foremost. The rhythm section is the driver of the bus. The rhythm section tells me what to do. The rhythm section gives me information about what key we're in. That's the foundation of it all. So this has a pretty simple rhythm section for this demo. It consisted of an A minor chord, to a G major chord, to a D minor chord, to an F major chord. But instead of playing an F major chord, I just kind of included the high E string in there because I thought it sounded cool, which actually makes it into an F major 7 chord. But you could just as easily make it into an F major chord and ignore the 7 part of it if you want. Now, in order to rock this up a bit, I took those major and minor chords and I reduced them to power chords. That's all power chords are. It's just reduced major chords or reduced minor chords. Power chords just have a root and a fifth, so there's no major or minor quality to them. So instead of an A minor chord, I just played an A power chord. And then instead of a G major chord, I just played a G power chord, also known as a G5 chord. Instead of a D minor chord, I played a D power chord. Instead of an F major chord, I played an F power chord. This also works in reverse too. If you're ever trying to, figure out how to solo over a chord progression that consists of just power chords, you ask yourself, what do those power chords represent? Which major and minor chords do those power chords represent? The way you get that answer is you look at the power chords. You could then turn to your circle of fifths and say, okay, what grouping of 6 do all these power chords seem to fall into? So even if I was only left with A, G, D, and F without any major or minor information, I could still turn to the circle of fifths and see that A, G, D, and F are grouped together in this grouping of 6 here. That lets me know that the A power chord is representative of an A minor chord, the G power chord is representative of a G major chord, the D power chord is representative of a D minor chord, and the F power chord is representative of an F major chord. Alright, so it works in both ways. You can reduce your major and minor chord progressions to just power chords, or you can take your power chord progressions and see which major or minor chords they represent and then turn it into a major minor progression. So this solo starts out right here in between frets 12 and 15. That is actually pentatonic position number 4 for the key that we're in, which is the key of A minor. So the reason I started out in pentatonic position number 4 for two reasons, actually. Number one, because pentatonic position number 1, which is down here between frets 5 and 8, it's, everyone talks about that. All the guitar lesson videos on YouTube, everyone's always talking about A minor pentatonic position number 1. Your pentatonic position number 1 can also be found up here between frets 17 and 20, but everyone talks about pentatonic position number 1, so I wanted to start in pentatonic position number 4. But that's not my real reason. My real reason is because when it comes to soloing, I like pentatonic position number 4 better than I like pentatonic position number 1. It's just the way that the notes are laid out, I just like it better. So at first glance, you may be saying to yourself, hey, that's not a pentatonic scale. What are you talking about? That's, there's all the notes of the A minor scale are in there. You have A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. You have all the notes. That's not the pentatonic scale. Well, it doesn't change the fact that it's still pentatonic position number 4. As I said, the pentatonic scale is just 5 notes, and then the diatonic scale is just 2 notes added to the 5-note pentatonic scale. So I started out here in pentatonic position number 4. Just the pentatonic portion of it is this. You have your notes, your 5 pentatonic notes, A, C, D, E, and G. You go ahead and you add in your 2 diatonic notes, which are B and F. That completes your 7-note key scale for the key that we're playing in. So the first lick that I played here was this. The next lick was then in the same spot, but on the lower strings. And then moving on, I still remained right here, and I did this. And then I ended by playing this, which is actually just the notes of the D minor chord because it's played over a D power chord, which is representative of a D minor chord in this key. And then I played an F major chord over the F power chord, which is representative of the F major chord in this key. It then moved on to the breakdown section, and that's where I arpeggiated each of the chords. So remember, we have an A minor chord, and then a G major chord, and then a D minor chord, and then an F major chord. So those are the notes that are going to make up my arpeggios. So for the A minor chord, I have to ask myself, what are the notes of an A minor chord? A, C, E. So within this little pentatonic position number 4 area, with our 2 diatonic notes added, therefore creating the full 7-note key scale for us to noodle around with and create melodic phrases in and whatnot, we have our A, C, and E right here. So over the A minor chord, I did something like just right up and down, but with a little bit more rhythm. And then I moved to the G major chord, which consists of the notes G, B, and D. So in this little pentatonic position number 4 area that we're playing in, we just have to identify where our G's, B's, and D's are. There's our G's, B's, and D's. So for this, I did, alright, right up the G major chord shape there, just playing all of the notes of the G major chord in that order. The rhythm section then moved on to the D minor chord, which consists of the notes D, F, and A. So right here in this little pattern that we've been playing in so far, it has a bunch of D's, F's, and A's in it. I just used this as my little path. I went like this. So I did add in one additional note right here, which is not a D, an F, or an A. That is a scale note, but it is not an arpeggio note or a chord tone of the D minor chord, but it sounded cool. So that's what I did over the D minor chord. And then over the F chord, which represents an F major chord in this key, here's your triad tones, your F, A, and C. So I could have played something like this. And that would have led into the next part, but that sounded a bit happy, and I didn't really like that type of, whatever phrase right there. So instead of playing this note, which is the 3rd, which is the note that makes the major chord, it gives it their quote-unquote happy quality, I just moved that down to here. I just played this note instead. So instead of playing this, it became this. That's actually called a sus2. So instead of playing an F major chord, that turned into an F sus2 chord. So you're removing the third and you're replacing it with the second of the F major chord. So that's a bit into chord theory there. We're not going to get into that here in this video, but that's what I played there. And then for this last part here in pentatonic position number 4, I just wanted to demonstrate some chord tone targeting. So it started with this. Once it gets to that note right there, which is the note B, that's the moment that the chord switches to the G chord. The notes of a G chord, which is representing a G major chord, are G, B, and D. So that's a chord tone of the G major chord. That's why it sounds good over that chord. And then it goes to here. So that's the note F, and that's played over the D chord, which is representative of a D minor chord in this key. D, F, A are the notes that make up a D minor chord, so that's the note F. And then right here, that's the note G. And G isn't a chord tone of the F major chord, at least it's not a triad tone. The F major triad tones are F, A, and C, but this G still sounds good played over that chord, so I played that note anyway. It doesn't always have to be a chord tone. Alright, so up until now, the entire solo took place all right here in pentatonic position number 4. You can stick to your 5 pentatonic notes to produce the pentatonic sound. You can add in the 2 extra missing diatonic notes to get the full melodic palette of notes for you to play around with. And then even to top that off and to become super ultra melodic as you possibly can be, chord tones, arpeggios, just paying attention to the chords. That's where it's at. So the next part of the solo then moves down here to pentatonic position number 1. So this is the probably more familiar position to a lot of people that might be watching this. This is the position that always gets talked about in many, many guitar lesson videos. Pentatonic position number 1. We all know and love this pentatonic box. It's still just the same 5 notes that we were dealing with up here, A, C, D, E, and G. Those are the 5 notes that make up the A minor pentatonic scale. A, C, D, E, G, A, C, D, E, G, A, C. And then I also added in the blue note as well. So when you add in the blue note, that's kind of maintaining that whole pentatonic-y rock type of sound to it. You're not getting that melodic flavor that you would be if you were to add the 2 missing diatonic notes. So I always kind of say that pentatonic and blues, they kind of go hand in hand with one another. So the blue note falls right here within pentatonic position number 1 on the G string right here, and then right here on the A string. So that's where your pentatonic note is. So the run that I did was... Now, the rhythm of those notes was mostly at a 16th note speed. So if the tempo of your song, if the 1, 2, 3, 4 metronome click of your song is click, 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 16th notes are going to be 4 notes per click. 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a... So most of it is da 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 da, 1E and a 2E and a... So not all of the notes, but most of the notes for these fast pentatonic parts were that 16th note rhythm. You can then go ahead and add on, I always like to refer to these as extensions. You're just stealing a little piece of the neighboring pentatonic positions. You have 5 pentatonic positions. That's how you cover the entire fretboard with the 5-note pentatonic scale. Those 5 notes, A, C, D, E, and G, which are the 5 notes that make up the A minor pentatonic scale, which is the pentatonic scale that we're using for the key of A minor. Those 5 notes can be found all up and down the entire neck of the guitar, and they form these different patterns. This is pattern 1. This is pentatonic position number 1, which would mean that this would be pentatonic position number 2 in this direction, and then pentatonic position 5 would be in that direction. So I'm stealing a little piece of pentatonic position number 5. And then I'm also stealing a little piece of pentatonic position number 2, which I'm referring to as the upper extension. And actually in that upper extension right there, you have all 5 of your pentatonic notes. You have the A, you have the C, you have the D, you have the G, and you have the E. So you have all 5 of your pentatonic notes right there. This lower extension right here, this is 4 of the 5 pentatonic notes. You have your 5 pentatonic notes in multiple locations spanned across 6 strings in your pentatonic position number 1. So it's just the notes A, C, D, E, and G. So this is just your pentatonic framework. Add in that little blue note, you know, just for some extra flavor, some extra taste. Actually, let's talk about that now. So the next part of the run could be done in 2 different ways. The next part of the run could be done either omitting the blue note or including the blue note. Let me show you what it sounds like doing both. So that's without the blue note. I'm just using the pentatonic scale there. So that's the part I want you to pay attention to, the slide from the 5th fret to the 7th fret. So instead of going from 5 to 7, I could always go 6 to 7. So it's a very subtle difference, but that's just the blue note for you, you know? You could either be or versus. It's very close to each other. So that's the blue note for you. It goes hand in hand with the pentatonic scale. I never think to myself, I'm playing the blues scale now, because that would imply that the blues scale is something that's very different than the pentatonic scale. I don't think about it at all like that. I just think I'm playing the pentatonic scale, and I'm just throwing in one extra out-of-key note, which is known as the blue note, and it goes hand in hand with the pentatonic scale. So moving on, we have... All right, so that's super common to do. You'll see people playing those 2 strings at the same time within pentatonic position number 1. It doesn't matter what key you're in, just whatever key you're in, your pentatonic position number 1, which for the key of A minor happens to land between frets 5 and 8. You bar the notes that are on the B and the G string. And also for a little bit of an additional bluesy effect, I'm bending some notes very... It doesn't have to be like a half step bend or even a full whole step bend or necessarily a quarter step bend. It's just you bend it a little bit. It just kind of adds some stank onto it, you know. So instead of I just a little bend, you know. You don't have to bend all the way, whatever. And that's that note I bent a little bit too. So instead of I just went just a little bend, just add some stank onto it, you know? That was too much. That was too much stank. Too much stank isn't good. Minimize the stank a bit. That was the right amount of stank right there. A little stank on that note. Alright, so those are the little tricks that you can do to get some of that bluesy effect in there. Add a bit of stank to some of the notes, just little tiny bends. Stick to primarily the pentatonic scale. Add in that blue note. And, you know, just noodle around with it. Have fun. Create licks. Comes with time, you know. The more you do the stuff, the more you noodle around with the pentatonic and blues scale, the more it's going to become familiar to you. And then we move up to this part, which is in this upper extension part, which, as I said, contains all 5 of the pentatonic notes. So, and then the final phrase of this section is, the remainder of the solo to the end takes that exact roadmap that we just worked out right here and moves it up an entire octave. So the exact same thing is found up here as well. Here's your pentatonic position number 1. It's the 5 pentatonic notes for the A minor pentatonic scale, A, C, D, E, G. Here's your lower extension. Here's your upper extension. So it's the same exact thing. You then have your blue notes in the same spot. Everything is exactly the same. So the lick that I did here, which again was at the speed of 16th notes, 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a, So those are groupings of 6. After you get through this initial wee diddly, we always call them wee diddlies because it's just, everyone does that same thing. After you get through that initial wee diddly, then it's sets of 6 notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's just like a little pattern there. And then it comes down to this little lower extension here, and it does the same exact pattern. And then it goes on to... And then here's the part where we go ahead and we add in those diatonic notes. The diatonic notes can be found in more than just the location shown here, but just for the purposes of this demo. And this is kind of the reduced roadmap that I teach a lot in a lot of my lessons. This lower extension, pentatonic position number 1, upper extension. I just like to add the diatonic notes on just the high 3 strings. That's not to say that you can't go ahead and add them in on the lower 3 strings. You absolutely can. You can do whatever you want. You have the entire fretboard. It's just that this simplified roadmap, it's just easier just to kind of remember, okay, add a diatonic note there, add a diatonic note there, add a diatonic note there. It's just the notes B and F. Anywhere you want to add a B and F on the entire fretboard, knock yourself out. But within this little roadmap on just the high 3 strings, that's where you're going to find your Bs and your Fs. So I kind of bent that note right there, which was on the 19th fret by a half step. That's actually that's a G major arpeggio right there. If you look at the 3 notes that make up that little thing I did right there, that's a G major chord, G, B, and D. So that's why that sounded cool, played over the G chord. And then I did this. So if I wouldn't have done this bend right here on the 17th fret of the B string, if I would have just went, that would have just been the pentatonic notes. But instead I included this note right here. I bent to this note. That's that extra missing diatonic note. That's the note F. So why did that note F sound good over that chord? Well, that's the note F. That was played over the D power chord, which is representative of a D minor chord, which consists of the notes D, F, and A. So it makes sense that bending to the note F over this D power chord is going to sound good. And then I ended this solo by bending this note right here, 16th fret of the G string, by 1/2 step. And then ending it like that. Alright, so that was a whole solo, and that's what I would consider to be the fundamentals. The pentatonic scale, adding in your 2 missing diatonic notes to create the full 7-note key scale for the key that you're playing in. That gives you your 7-note scale, which spans the entire fretboard and makes all these different patterns and whatnot. Pentatonic scale, diatonic scale, add in that blue note. Some people call it the blue scale. Me, I just call it the pentatonic scale, with the addition of 1 note called the blue note. And pay attention to the chords that you're soloing over, because that's where the real melodic magic happens. Pay attention to the chords, chord tones, arpeggios, chord chasing, keeping up with the chord changes, triad soloing. There's all kinds of different names for keeping up with the chord changes, paying attention to the chords that you're soloing over. That's where the real melodic magic happens. So I hope you guys enjoyed this lesson. Thank you for watching. See you next time.